Grief is defined as the response to loss. It's the final act of love you give to those we loved. In 1969, an American Swiss psychiatrist wrote in her book on death and dying that grief could be divided into 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. At the age of 16, I lost my older sister. I feel like the death of a sibling is one of the most neglected losses. Of course, nobody is prepared for death, although it is inevitable. When I received the news that my sister had passed away, I had no idea of how to go about the situation. I was in disbelief. I remember seeing my mom sitting in the car with tears falling from her eyes. You could tell a piece of her was missing. So many things were running through my mind at the time, but still, I didn't know what to do or how to act. So I chose not to accept it as a reality. I was in denial. I didn't want to imagine a life without my sister, so I didn't. However, it's very difficult to avoid reality when the thing that you are trying to avoid is the only thing that everyone you know is talking about. The main conversation amongst family and friends was now centered on the loss of my sister. Every conversation had lines like, "Everything will be okay," or "Stay strong," and a personal favorite, "Don't cry." Although I understood that everybody was just trying to be there for me and support me, I felt like their words robbed me of an opportunity to mourn my sister. However, I chose to stay strong and not to cry, for my parents, for my family, for my sister's friends, and for everyone who felt the pain of losing her. 2 to 3 months after she passed away, I realized there's no running away from the reality. My sister was never going to walk into my room again and tell me a terrible joke. She was never going to make me pancakes for breakfast, and she would never sing for me. I started to get angry at the situation as well as at myself, even though everything that had happened was out of my control. That was anger. For the longest time, I blamed myself for everything. Blaming myself definitely brought about an immense amount of sadness. When I look back at it today, dealing with loss isn't easy. Whether it be your friend, your parent, your sibling, or even a pet. Even so, blaming yourself for a situation that is beyond you makes dealing with it 1,000 times harder. I started to imagine what-if scenarios. I wondered what I could have done to avoid what had happened. I also found myself asking why. Why my sister? Why me? Why my family? What did we do to deserve this type of pain? What did I do? You see, the reality of losing my sister became more apparent and harder to ignore. Forced positivity and repressing my feelings were common ways for me to deal with most of my problems. However, they weren't exactly efficient. A wave of extreme sadness took over, and I had no hope for better days. I felt like I was taking a step forward, but the world was pushing me 2 steps back. There came the depression. My support system was no longer as strong as it was closer to the time of my sister's actual passing. People weren't checking on me as often. They were no longer trying to keep me distracted. And honestly, it felt like they were no longer there for me. This feeling was never ending. However, being on my own did give me a lot of time to reflect. I couldn't understand how so many months later, I felt worse than I did the day my sister had actually passed away. And then I realized, the road to acceptance isn't as easy as people make it seem. Healing takes time. Different people look for different ways to keep their loved ones close after experiencing loss. Some people create memorials. Other people visit the burial site as often as they can just to keep the memory alive. I turned to my faith. My theory was, since my sister is in heaven and I can't directly speak to her to get the closure I just wanted, I could instead pray about it and hopefully God would deliver my message to her somehow. My family also kept me going, okay? Their never-ending support kept the memory of my sister alive. They reminded me that we were walking on this path together because we don't let each other grieve alone. A healthy and strong support system makes dealing with it 1,000 times easier than it ever was when you try to do it by yourself. I chose to be happy. I remembered what type of a person my sister was. Her name was Nsansa. Nsansa is a Bemba word that translates to happiness or joy. I convinced myself that she would hate to know that I'm not okay and that I'm unable to pick myself up after so long. Becky Hobbs sings in one of her songs, "Don't cry for me when I'm gone, just let my memory live on." And this is exactly what I chose to do. This decision brought me to the final stage of grief, acceptance. Today I live every day believing that my sister is happy, knowing that I'm going on with my life while keeping her memory close to me. I was only 16 years old and I had to teach myself how to deal with loss at such a young age. I realized it doesn't matter how old you are. Dealing with loss isn't easy and it takes time. All the 5 stages of grief. What a roller coaster. Most of us go through at least 2 or 3 of these stages after experiencing loss. Of course, everybody's experience is different and at their own pace. But for as long as you can love, you can grieve, regardless of how old you are or what you have lost. Thank you.